You see those impregnable walls stretching into the sunset sky, and your imagination conjures up scenes from Hollywood movies, noble knights in gleaming armor, feasts with roasted wild boars, and beautiful ladies in silk gowns strolling through manicured gardens. This is an image that textbooks and romantic literature have cultivated for centuries. But you don't smell anything. In reality, a medieval castle was not a romantic fortress, but a zone of biological danger where the architecture itself worked against your survival. Even kings lived in conditions that today would be called a sanitary disaster. Imagine, you are transported back to the year 1400. You stand before the castle's massive gates, and the very first breath burns your lungs. It is a mixture of rotting organic matter, sewage, and smoke from which there is no escape. Could you have lasted here even one night before the cold of the walls, the parasites in your bed, or the infection on your plate broke your will? Today, we'll look behind the facade of clean history. To recreate this nightmare, we analyzed archaeological reports, PhD research on daily life in England, and authentic diaries of those who actually lived within these walls. Using the latest AI algorithms, we've brought to life the faces of the inhabitants and every detail of their daily hell. Welcome to a world where your bed was a battlefield and an ordinary breakfast could be your last. The first thing that strikes a modern visitor about the castle is the complete lack of ventilation. Walls several meters thick kept out not only enemies, but also deadly miasmas. The main source of the aroma of power were the latrines, simple openings in the wall through which waste fell directly into the moat or accumulated in cesspools at the base of the residential towers. The stench permeated the stones so deeply that even during the most solemn moments, it was impossible to mask it with incense. There existed one of the most repulsive professions in history, the gong farmer. These people were the only barrier between the castle and being completely flooded with excrement. Their work began at night. They manually scooped feces from the pits, literally wading through them, so that the lord and his family wouldn't suffocate by morning. For the gong farmer, it was a way to earn a living. For you, it would have been the first step toward typhus or cholera. But even if you stayed away from the toilets, the air inside was poisoned by smoke. The only source of heat were open hearths. Smoke filled the halls, settling as soot on tapestries, faces, and lungs. In 1500, the castle was not a place of luxury. It was a giant stone oven filled with the stench of sewage and cheap fuel. You hope that sleep will bring relief, but in a medieval castle, night is the time of attacks. Even if you occupy a place of honor in the Lord's chambers, your bed is not a place of rest, but a perfect breeding ground for parasites. Straw mattresses were the standard even for the nobility. The problem was that the straw inside them was changed extremely rarely, sometimes only once a year. Entire ecosystems thrived within them: lice, fleas, and rats. Fleas didn't just bite, they carried diseases that could wipe out half the castle's population in a week. Sleep turned into a daily battle. People woke up covered in red spots, and the faces of noble ladies of that time often hid bite marks and sores under a thick layer of lead white. Rats were everywhere in the castle. They ran along the ceiling beams and could fall right on top of you while you slept. On cold nights, the castle's inhabitants often slept in groups. Servants huddled together on the floor in the main hall, and nobles with their entourages to stay warm. This meant that if one person fell ill, by morning everyone was infected. Social distancing in the 1400s was an impossible luxury. Breakfast at the castle was yet another test of one's immune system. Forget about clean water. The
The water in the moats and wells was often contaminated due to their proximity to latrines and livestock pens. Drinking it meant signing your own death warrant from dysentery. That is why everyone, from pages to kings, drank ale or weak wine. Alcohol was the only way to disinfect the liquid even slightly. You would be in a state of mild intoxication from the very morning just to avoid dying of thirst. As for food, the legendary nightly feasts are largely a myth. Most of the time, the diet consisted of coarse bread, porridge, and oversalted meat that was stored for months without refrigerators. To mask the taste of rot and rancid fat, cooks used huge amounts of spices, pepper, cloves, and ginger. Spices were a sign of wealth, but their main function was utilitarian, to drown out the smell of decaying flesh. If you were a common servant, your diet was even worse. You scavenged leftovers from the master's table, which might have sat in the warmth for several days. Food poisoning was so common that it wasn't even considered an illness until a person began to die in agony. If poor food or the castle's cold walls had taken their toll on your health, the most terrifying stage would follow: a visit to a medieval doctor. In the 1400s, medicine was a mixture of superstition, astrology, and pure sadism. The primary method of treating any ailment, from fever to a headache, was bloodletting. It was believed that illnesses were caused by an imbalance of the humors, body fluids, and to restore balance, the bad blood had to be drained from your body. This was often done with dirty instruments, leading to sepsis faster than the illness itself could kill you. For women, medicine was particularly cruel. Childbirth within castle walls turned into a lottery with death as the prize. The lack of basic knowledge about sterility meant that infections were transmitted directly from the doctor or midwife. An analysis of historical data reveals a shocking mortality rate among young women of noble birth. The castle that was supposed to protect them became their tomb. Life for a woman in a castle is often idealized as that of a lady of the heart waiting for a knight in a high tower. But the reality was far bleaker. A woman, even of royal blood, was often nothing more than a political asset or a means of forging alliances. Their lives were spent in a political cage. Marriages were arranged in childhood, often to men 3 times their age. The stories of Anne Boleyn or Catherine Howard are just the tip of the iceberg. Within these walls, women faced immense psychological pressure. Their sole purpose was to produce heirs, and any failure in this regard could lead to banishment, accusations of witchcraft, or even execution. There were also rituals erased from history related to the wedding night and a woman's status, which modern historians are only just beginning to translate from Latin. A woman in the castle was locked away not only physically by stone walls, but also socially, having no say even in matters concerning her own body. The castle was not only a home, but also the center of judicial power, and this power was both visible and bloody. Public punishments served as a kind of social glue and were the main form of entertainment at the time. If you broke the Lord's law, punishment followed immediately. We found unique insights in the diaries of executioners such as Franz Schmidt. The executioner was an outcast of society. He lived in a separate house and could not associate with ordinary people, yet he was the very instrument of maintaining order. Executions by boiling, quartering, or breaking on the wheel were carried out right at the castle walls so that every resident would know the price of disobedience. The psychological pressure was constant. The sight of decomposing bodies on gallows at the gates was part of the everyday landscape. For us, this is shocking. For a person living in the 1400s, it was the only guarantee that chaos and lawlessness would not break into the fortress. We look at these photorealistic faces and feel a mixture of horror and pity. But this raises the key question. How did people back then cope with this psychologically? They had no antibiotics, no hot showers, and no concept of personal space. Perhaps what we call barbarism was a form of supreme psychological resilience. Today, we are shielded by filters of comfort, food delivery, sterile hospitals, and central heating. These filters have made us soft and incredibly vulnerable. We view the Middle Ages as the Dark Ages, but perhaps it was then that people saw the world most honestly, without the illusions that blind us today. You wouldn't survive in their world. Your immune system would give out in an hour, and your psyche in a day. But the main question is this: could they survive in our world, in a world that seems incredibly sterile to them, devoid of physical meaning, and frighteningly fragile? History is a mirror, and the castle, with its stench, rats, and cruelty, reminds us how long and dirty the road was to the comfort we take for granted today. What era should we uncover next with the help of AI? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and remember, history deserves to be remembered without embellishment. Subscribe so you don't miss new videos.